Welcome to Heroes First Podcast, sponsored by Fund the First, the nation's leading verified crowdfunding platform for first responders, military, and medical professionals. And now, your host, broadcasting from Long Island, New York, Robert Garland.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this episode of Heroes First Podcast. Each show, you'll hear from a new guest that portrays excellence in the first responder, military, or medical professional field. If you are an active or retired member of the service, or even a family member or a friend, then this show is for you. Our podcast is also proud partners with the Everyday Heroes Podcast Network and the Law Enforcement Today Podcast Network. I would like to present to you our guest for episode 27 of this podcast series, Pete James. Pete, pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here.
No, awesome to have you. You know what? I worked in narcotics for almost 7 years. And when I was going through training in narcotics, there was something so big that they talked about. You know, you're going to be out there buying drugs. You're going to be doing these wiretap investigations and everything. And you're going to want to protect your privacy. And I always looked into it and I was like, well, how do you do this? And then when I asked them, they're like, oh, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, I start seeing your stuff. I'm like, wow, this guy is doing what we should have been doing the whole time. And now where I am in my career, I don't care that my face is everywhere. You know, it is what it is. But what you're doing is really incredible. I see your stuff being shared everywhere. And, you know, why don't you give a quick rundown of what officer privacy is, but then we're going to backtrack for a second after you do that.
Yeah. Also speaking of when I was working, I always believed that there was nothing you could do about privacy, but there is something you can do. Briefly, I spent 25 years in law enforcement with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department in California. Toward the end of my career, I started working in digital forensics. So I retired. I continued that work as a consultant for an a couple of e-discovery companies and a big Fortune 50 company doing online investigations, open source intelligence, and that type of work. In doing that, I was using the internet and people search sites in my investigations. And so that eventually led me to creating officerprivacy.com.
No, it's really great. It's definitely needed for everything. But I want to get into the full story with Officer Privacy, where you came up with the idea and everything. But with our listeners, I'd love to give everyone a background on who you are. And you said it best before the show started. We don't like to talk about ourselves, as cops, former cops, former law enforcement. We don't like to talk about ourselves. We like to talk about other people, but I got you on my show. I hate to do it, Pete, but I'm going to make you talk about yourself. So you started your career in the Navy. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I went in the Navy at 17. I basically had no direction growing up. And I was in a high school program. I don't know if they still have it. They called it ROP. It's where you go to work with a professional in your community. And the person I worked with was in air conditioning and refrigeration. So naturally, since that's all I knew, I went to a Navy recruiter and said, I want to do, air conditioning and refrigeration. And he handed me a booklet and it had all the different jobs that you could select in the Navy. And I'm paging through and I stumble across intelligence specialist. And I'm like, okay, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. You get to learn secrets and how fun is that? So I was an intelligence specialist. I did 3 years active duty, a couple of years in the reserves. I lived on an aircraft carrier. We ended up being in the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean. And it was a really good experience. I think all young adults should serve in the military.
No, well, thank you.
It was a good experience.
Thank you so much for your service. But was there anything specific that made you choose the Navy over any other branch?
Tom Selleck.
Yeah.
Magnum PI.
Okay.
The intro. The intro showed him in Navy whites in his Navy uniform, and his background was he was naval intelligence before he became a PI in Hawaii.
Oh wow. Okay. I guess that's a good reason to go in. Why not?
There was a little bit of that, a little bit of Get Smart, max in 99. And, uh, you know,
No,
why, no good reason.
listen,
The media influenced me in that decision.
Well, we know about media influence nowadays, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So, but we won't get into that right now. We will not get into that. But so after that, you went into the DA's office, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I was a process server, knocking on doors and serving subpoenas to witnesses and victims, hoping they would show up in court.
They never do, though.
Sometimes they don't.
They never do. And then obviously you finished your career with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department.
Yes.
And you finished as a supervisor, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yes. I ended up promoting a couple of times and finished my career as a watch commander in patrol. The bulk of my career, though, was as a sergeant and as a detective sergeant for the community that I worked in. It was a great career, great people, and really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. That's great. The police department is such a wonderful experience. It really did. It really, I mean, you did 26 years. That's incredible. I'm at 13, and I want to get out now.
It goes fast.
It does go fast. You learn a lot. You see so much throughout your career. But, with what you did, then you got into all these digital forensics things. So why don't you explain what digital forensics exactly is?
Well, just like any other piece of evidence, the digital evidence is just as important. Everybody has a cell phone, and so we look for evidence, whether it's on the cell phone or whether it's on a computer or a laptop or even a GPS device, to prove or disprove what the criminal did. The federal case I testified in was a small GPS device, and I was able to show that he was a pimp, that he was crossing state lines, which made it a federal crime. The state court, I testified and this is as a digital forensics expert. That was a drug case. I also testified as an expert witness on the civil side, and those were mostly intellectual property theft and divorces, because people get very angry at their ex, and they want to use any evidence out there against them. So,
right. Now, digital. I mean, listen, everybody has a digital footprint nowadays, and I'm sure that's where you really got heavily involved into getting into Officer Privacy, the company that you run since 2013. I mean, it's great to be able to protect our privacy. We have, I mean, think about how much social media we have. We have every single social media out there. There's Instagram, Facebook, whatever, Telegram, Snapchat, TikTok, every single thing, you name it, there's digital imprint of you. Especially if you're using your particular email, your particular name, all that kind of stuff. Most people don't take a moment to say, I'm going to use a fake name. I'm going to use a fake email, and most people don't realize even if they are, it's still tracked to their same IP address.
Mm-hmm.
So for all you criminals listening right now, I'm giving up a lot of key information for you, what to do. But, what made you go this route to develop your company? And, I love business, so I love hearing about how you developed your company also, but we'll get into that in a moment. What made you really want to do this on your own and to help, all law enforcement to protect their privacy and their data?
So I remember when the internet got big, and I remember when we realized that our information was out there. I remember sitting in a patrol briefing room in the early 2000s. I know the internet's been around longer than that, but when it really, really started to grow and more of our information was being posted was the late 90s, early 2000s. And people were saying, look, you can look up yourself and your information is out there. Your private information is out there. So I've always known that our private information is out there, but I always believed that you couldn't do anything about it, that you just had to give up and say, well, that's the way it is. It's the world we live in. So I'm doing these online investigations for for a corporation that I used to work for. And I was using these sites and I was looking up people's personal information, their home address, their phone number, their email address. And I thought, I'm going to take myself off these sites. So I went home and it took me 6 hours. It took me 6 hours to go through 25, 30 sites. And, I'm pretty good on a computer, right? I'm a computer forensics expert and I'm on a computer all day and I'm looking at the artifacts of digital evidence. And so it took me 6 hours. And then I took my spouse off. It took me another 6 hours. And I started to put together, it's unsafe for law enforcement officers to have their private information, their home address out there. It's not only the people who would physically attack officers at their homes, it's also the identity theft part of it, because we are good targets, right? Because we have jobs, we have stable jobs, probably have good credit. So as I'm, so I go through the sites and I come up with a very crude way of trying to do it better. I've taken some programming classes and I study, open source intelligence methods. And so I came up with some ideas and I gave it to a programmer and I said, this is kind of what I want to do. And he took it and he made it 10 times better. So now we have this software that we can use. And I cut that 6 hours down to 2 hours, spread out over 3 sessions, an hour the first session, a half hour, and then a half hour. So all that time can now be condensed into just a couple hours using the software that I created. So I reached out to a few friends and I said, hey, I've got this idea. I'd like to test it out. Can I use your information and remove you from the internet? And of course they're like, yeah, absolutely. So I did a few of those and then created and rolled out officerprivacy.com. So officerprivacy.com has 2 services. One is where we do all the work for you. So you submit one form to us, and then my team goes through and removes your information from the top 30 sites. And then we monitor. If you show up again, we remove you again. A little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, that very software I'm telling you that we created, I have made that free.
Really?
So everybody can sign up. You don't have to be law enforcement to sign up. You don't have to be an officer to sign up. Everybody can sign up. It is free for 14 days, which is plenty of time to go through and take your information off. Past the free trial period, past the 14 days, it's $9.99 a month to continue. You don't have to continue. You can cancel, but I recommend that you keep it up so that you can go back and check the sites that because you will be relisted on those sites. Mm-hmm. So 2 services, one where we do it for you. The other is where you do it yourself. The one where you do it yourself is free for 14 days. And then after that, it's about $10 a month to continue.
So now what's the pricing for if you guys were just to do it? Is it the same thing, $10 a month?
No, it's currently $199 for the initial account setup and initial removal. That's where one of my team members will manually go through each one of the 30 sites and remove you from them. And then after that, it's $19.99 a month for monitoring. So we have 2 kinds of monitoring: technical, where we're scanning the back ends of sites. If we see a connection, we remove you. In addition to that, at least once every 3 months, we're going to go eyeballs on. A real human is going to look at your site, at those sites, and look for your information. If you're on there, we remove you.
Oh, wow. That's pretty incredible, because if I put my name, let's use me for a perfect example. Mm-hmm. I'm basically, you could say I'm a public figure, right? I'm in the news all the time. I'm on podcasts. I'm a detective, with my company, I'm all over the place. You type in my name, I'm on every single website there is, even like all these other websites, was it Speak You or something? There's like, it shows like where you live and what your income is and like all that kind of stuff. And I've tried to do it. I've tried to remove myself and then it just pops right back up, so
We do find that when we go through and do the manual monitoring, we do find that the average client is repopulated on 2 to 3 sites every 3 months. Wow. But here's what you do. You're going to be on a lot of sites. If you just put your name in, you're going to come up, you're going to be shown on all these different sites because you're in business and you're out there. But to narrow down on your home address, you put your name, your first and last name in quotes. And then you put the word address, and then you put the city that you live in. So you want to think like an attacker would think, right? How are they going to try and find you? Because they don't want to go through page after page after page on Google. They want to narrow down their searches. So put your name in quotes. And what that does is it prevents Google from looking at just your first name and giving you a result, just your last name giving you a result. So the quotes, the results have to be or are going to be within the quotes. So put your name in quotes, first name, last name, put that in quotes. And then outside the quotes, the word address. And what that is doing is it is grabbing all of the people search sites, the ones that show your home address, and then the city you live in. And you have to assume that an attacker who is doing research on you knows at least the city you live in or the city you work in. And that's close enough to get results. So you're going to start seeing the results of sites like whitepages.com, Redaris, Intellius, Fast People Search, Spokio, all of these different sites. You're going to start seeing those results in Google. And the other way to do it too is just to go straight to some of those sites. But most people may not know the big sites. But I'll tell you the top 5 most popular sites based on web traffic: whitepages.com, Spokio, Been Verified, My Life, and Instant Checkmate. Those are the most common ones, or the most popular ones based on web traffic.
And then some of those, if you pay for those services, you could even get more information on people, right?
Yes. So the idea, yes, the way they make money is they buy your data from data brokers, and then they populate it into their website, and they sell your data to other sites. They are constantly refreshing and updating your data, so the way they make money is by the ads that they have on their website. So they want more and more traffic, and they will also make more money by selling you a more comprehensive report, which costs a few dollars. And by the way, if you go to enough of these sites, if you're doing research, if you're an officer or a private investigator, or just nosy, you can go to enough of these sites and get all the information that they're going to sell to you. It just takes a little bit more time. So, common question is, well, how are they getting this information? Where are they pulling this information from? It's everything from voter records, your social media. They are scanning your social media, which is likely how they're getting the names of your relatives, right? Because on social media, you're going to be connected to your relatives. Magazine subscriptions, sweepstakes entries, your grocery store rewards card. Anytime you fill out a form and it has your address on it, there's some small print where there's terms and conditions. They are going to resell your information. And it's a huge industry, and the data, our data is just constantly being purchased and resold.
It's wild. I mean, I guess it makes sense with all the phone calls you get from all these these people all over the place, and the emails and everything. So let me ask you something. How do we, a big one, LexisNexis, accuracy and all that kind of stuff. Is there a way of removing information from there?
They do have opt-out procedures. They do not make it easy. They will require you to copy your government ID and mail in a copy. That's the thing about these sites. Everyone is different. Some you have to have a phone number and verify a phone number. Others, you just need an email address. Others, you have to verify a link from an email. Some you have to send an email into them. So every single site is different. So with the higher tier databases like LexisNexis, you can opt out of their marketing. But it is not easy. They don't want you to do it. They make it difficult, but it can be done.
Okay. So there is a way of essentially erasing somebody from everywhere.
Yeah. And now you don't want to go too far. And because if you go too far, we all live in this world where we need to be able to be identified.
Mm-hmm.
When we apply for TSA PreCheck, we have to be in a government database somewhere where they will know we are a real person, we are the people we say we are, and we're not some terrorist who came over the border that has made a fake profile, right? So there has to be some legitimacy. The majority of my clients are law enforcement officers. We're going to be in databases. Okay, we have to have a driver's license to have the job. We're going to have a record somewhere. We also rely on credit if we want to buy a house, buy a car, get a credit card, get a student loan. So we need to be in the credit bureaus. We don't want to be removed from them because we'll never be able to get a line of credit, right? So we don't want to necessarily go too extreme, right? We don't want to be these people that lives in a Winnebago and just travels and crashes in Walmart parking lots all over the country, right? We have to live our lives. And that's not the life that the majority of officers are going to want. They're going to want a house. They want their kids to go to school. They want their spouse to be able to get a job and have friends. They're not running from anything, right? They just want their privacy back. So there's always a balance between being a privacy nut and living our life and not being a weirdo. So
so easily put.
Well, you can go down this privacy rabbit hole and really start getting really weird when maybe the threat isn't as great, right? You want to know, okay, what's my threat? What's the vulnerability? What's the risk, right? I believe that there's no reason any of us need to be on these people search sites, right? Where anybody with an internet connection can run our names and find exactly where we live. That is dangerous. We don't need that. Law enforcement officers don't need that. There are many other professions as well. By the way, half of my clients are not law enforcement officers. They're realtors, they're judges, they're prosecutors, they're attorneys. They are people who are victims of harassment, stalking, domestic violence. They don't want their information out there, yet they still want to live their life, right? They still want to have property and have a normal life. So, there's a balance there.
No, this is incredible what you have with officer privacy. I always see your stuff on law enforcement's Instagram and a bunch of other Instagrams. People share your stuff all the time. So, if you don't mind sharing, what's like a rough estimate of how many people you've helped out, protect their data?
So we have helped thousands of officers in all 50 states.
Wow. So you have every single state. Wow.
Every single state.
That's incredible.
Yes. And we are limited to the US. Because I get queries from outside the country, we are limited to the US.
Do you plan on maybe extending outside country or no?
I have no plans to do that.
No plans? Okay. Protect our own, right?
There's 800,000 law enforcement officers in the US.
Can't forget the retired ones too.
That's a really good point that I had not thought of. And a retired guy brought it up. He's like, look, when I was working, I put guys away for 10, 20 years. They're getting out.
Yeah. How
easy would it be for them to find me? I put them away for 20 years. They're getting out now.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. So, there's a question I wanted to ask you, but it just slipped my mind. Do you like, I love hearing about business. So obviously you're a business with officer privacy, to get this off the ground. Did you raise capital for it? You don't have to obviously say how much, but did you raise capital? How did you go about it?
So I used, when I was doing the forensics work, I left one company and went to another.
Mhm.
The original company, I was still working on cases with them. So I continued working that case while I had another job, and everybody knew about this. And I transitioned to working that case as a subcontractor. So I made money from that. So I was working my regular day job and working that as well. I ended up testifying in deposition and in trial. Through all of that, I made a little bit of my LLC, my business, had a little bit of money. I used that to start. And my first big outlay of money for the business to get clients was with Police One.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. So that was big. Now, of course, behind the scenes, I had a programmer, and I'm, a lot of different places to spend money when you start a business.
Mhm.
So, but the big outlay, the biggest, was through Police One, and they've been tremendous. And I've continued working with them. I've written several articles for them and do advertising with them. I've expanded that to other places. I've been to a handful of conferences. I have a couple more conferences coming up this year to do in person. So there's, yes, moving from law enforcement, where you're an employee of the government, to an entrepreneur where you do the majority of everything, is quite a steep learning curve, because
It's different. It's definitely
there
different.
is, yeah, I mean, even the marketing, effective marketing, and how do you get, I have a great product. I have, a free and premium product. How do I get that in front of my clients? 800,000 officers out there. How do I get the message to them that, look, Google yourself, you're on these sites. I can help you take your information off these sites so you can be safer. There's so many, everybody's getting bombarded with messages.
Yeah.
And how do I get my message in front of people? So just the marketing side of business is quite a learning curve.
Well, you have a great value proposition, right? And that's what's important with any business. It's the value proposition. It's what people are going to be attracted to and what people want to, get back from using your business, right? But with marketing, I mean, we've been with Fund the First, we've had multiple marketing agencies that we've worked with. And fortunately, not any of them really work too well. And what we've noticed when you work with a marketing agency as opposed to working with partners. So for instance, like with Officer Privacy, I would love to partner with Officer Privacy. I think we could be great working together and spreading awareness for both platforms. I think it's incredible. So obviously we could talk offline about that. But when you partner, it builds organic relationships. So now people see that I'm trusting Officer Privacy and I'm going to spread it. And because people see what I do, I'm trusting Officer Privacy, they're going to spread it. And it's that organic growth that trickles down, and people are organically sharing it on their Instagram, on their Facebook, on their LinkedIn, on their Twitter, on their TikTok. And that's real marketing. When you start to get that organic marketing, that's when it really, really creates a strong impact, and people start to learn who you are, why you exist, and what you're doing. And that's really important. So, I mean, but marketing, there's so many different angles to take. I mean, especially digital ads and commercials and getting on TV. There's so many different angles. But I want to bring up your website really quick. I want to show this. So if anybody's watching on the YouTube video later on, I'd love for them to see what you have over here. So feel free to chat away about it.
Yeah. So the basics is that right now your private information is online, and we can help you. We can help you remove it. That is Colonel Grossman there. He recently gave me a shout out, and Colonel Grossman has been around for a long, long, long time. He is a military veteran, is a trainer, and he's a wonderful man and a wonderful human being. And So I have his endorsement on the front. I have a short YouTube video if you want to watch it, which kind of summarizes what I've been saying. And
That's great. Having those YouTube videos are great. I'll direct people in the video to watch that as well.
yeah.
So
So I have testimonials. I've been on all the logos scrolling through. I've been on in all of those organizations. And YS, I'm former law enforcement. I only hire former and current law enforcement to work with your data.
that's great. I mean, Pete, so let me ask something. Your dashboard, so to say, is that if I had an account and I logged in, I could see my entire dashboard and see everything from here?
So we have two accounts. One is where we provide the software for you to go through the sites and remove your information. The other is where we do everything for you. If we do everything for you, you don't have an account because there is nothing for you to do after you sign up. That login page there is for those that have signed up for access to our software, for them to log into their account and start working their way through the sites. For each one of those sites, by the way, we have written instructions for each site. I have screenshots with bright red arrows and step-by-step instructions for each one of the 30 sites. I also have tips and tricks on moving through the sites quickly, the fastest way to do it. And but the tips and tricks are effective as well. I share which sites feed to other smaller sites, so they are very impactful. I share information about which ones will remove you right away.
No, it's great. I mean, Pete, this is incredible. Oh, you know what? The question just popped into my head that I wanted to ask earlier. So you're in the business, obviously, of protecting other people's data, but now all these officers are coming to your platform and they're putting their data in here, their PII, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. How do you protect their information?
Yeah, so we have several different layers of protection along the way. Probably first, in order to get to the site, I use the software to make certain that the traffic is not coming from anywhere but the US, number one. Number two, I protect it against attacks to keep it secure. I also have different software running to stop any attacks or any intrusions. The data itself is stored, and everybody that has access, which is a very, very limited group, we all use two-factor authentication to get in. So even if somebody were to get our password, and our passwords are very long and complex, even if they were to get them, they wouldn't have the second factor to be able to get in to see the data. On the working side of it, my team members, to access the information, it's all two-factor authentication. They're all on encrypted, BitLocker encrypted devices, so that even if there's nothing stored locally, it's all stored up in the cloud. So even if my laptop or computer were stolen, it's all BitLockered, so nobody's getting in.
Right.
So yeah, very robust security. And I will tell you that I have lost customers because of it, because they get frustrated. And I try and explain, no, come back. I'm sorry, but there's always that balance between security and usefulness. And sometimes we go overboard on the security and people say, I can't get in, I can't create an account. And so they get frustrated and leave. And it's like, okay, let me help you here. Right. So, there's always that balance, but we take the data, the security and the privacy very seriously.
Good. Have you ever considered using blockchain technology to protect some stuff as well?
No. The short answer, no.
The long answer is too long, though. I'm a big crypto guy. I did one of my large investigations that I had. One of my wires actually ended up getting onto the dark web, and then I ended up buying drugs using Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. And it was, we were doing a lot of stuff that the DA's office here in Special Narcotics New York never did before. So it was new for me, but I understand blockchain technology. So because I've been in the crypto market since it started, since 20. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's been fun for me, but I understand it,
Mhm.
and if you haven't been in for that long, it's sometimes a little harder to pick up. But
Mhm.
so we were doing things that the DA's office has never seen before, but you see what's really out there when you're buying drugs using crypto and you're investigating people and trying to find them on the blockchain. That's a
Mhm.
whole different story. A whole
Mhm.
different story. So I
Mhm.
mean, listen, business opportunities, obviously, if you were able to open up to that, that's a whole different realm.
Mhm.
It's really good, but that's a whole other story. We could go on for hours about that, but that's a whole other story. So, I don't want to waste any more of your time, and I think it's great that what you're doing with Officer Privacy is definitely helping out a lot of people. But I got 3 questions I got to ask you that are particular to the show.
Okay.
So, first question I'm going to ask, great career, Navy, DA's office, being a police officer, and now with everything you're doing with Officer Privacy. I always like to ask people, would you do it all again? Would you take a step back and change anything in your career, or do you love where you're at right now?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't change anything. I think uh, military service, from 17 to 20 was extremely valuable. Um, I enjoyed with the sheriff's department. I enjoyed the positions I worked and the people I worked with. Um, that led me into the digital forensic side of it, which took me to the consulting side, which is, I thought I worked hard when I was in law enforcement, and working as a consultant, it's, very demanding, and you learn what they mean by, being outside your comfort zone, learning to live outside your comfort zone. You have done that. I mean, the first time you bought drugs, you're probably, even though you had geared up for it and practiced and trained, and you're probably a little nervous.
Yep, just a little.
So, and then starting a business, you just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable and living outside your comfort zone. And it's very uncomfortable sometimes. So, um, yeah, I'm basically a private person, yet I have to be out here, in order to prove to people that I am a real person
Mhm.
and that I am who I say I am. So, anyway, I kind of veered off. So, would I do anything different? No, I enjoyed the military. I enjoyed my law enforcement career and the people that I worked with. It's an honorable career. Um, right now, it's extremely difficult to be in that career, but it will get better. We are starting to see the signs of all these people who have said that they want to defund the police. Now they're finally realizing, what, violent crime is out of control. We've got to now start funding the police. So, the pendulum swung to the extreme, and now it's going to come back. So, I would just say, you know, Americans appreciate our law enforcement. It will get better. So hang in there. Just, continue doing the right thing, and it will get better.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. So, next question. What does a hero mean to you?
Hmm. I don't really have anything um, wise to say, other than, uh, just people who, normal people who overcome their fears in extreme situations and do the best they can.
Mhm. Can't say it any better. It's perfect. And the last question, and I want this this answer to be the first thing that pops in your head. And sometimes it's not the best thing that you want to say, but whatever pops in your head and why, obviously. So if you were to have one superpower, what would it be?
Yeah, I sorry for the dead air. I really don't have.
It's okay. I mean,
I really don't have a good
superpowers-
answer for that. I don't know.
What's the first
To be-
thing? If you one superpower, what was the first thing that popped into your head?
To be invisible, but I don't know how that would really be practical or when I would use it. So, yeah.
Well, you just so why did you want to be invisible though? There's got to be a reason.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good reason. No, sorry. Can you edit this part out?
You know what's great? These actually make for good listeners. People like listening to these things. I just put everything in. So, but no, I mean, listen, you know, I have a million different superpowers I want, and sometimes I don't have reasons for them either. It's just I want that superpower, you know. But no, Pete, this has been a pleasure to have you on. I'm really happy to be able to let our listeners know about everything you're doing with Officer Privacy, and I'll put everything in the YouTube link, and I'll send you everything. But to everyone listening, everyone watching, thank you all for joining episode 27 of Heroes First Podcast, and we'll see you all next time. Pete, thank you again.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, take care.
You've been listening to the Heroes First Podcast with Robert Garland. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, share, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, make sure to visit funthefirst.com and follow us on social media at funthefirst. See you next time.